It is Kieran Trippier. It is delicious! Glorious! Glorious!
Walker in there too. Luke Shaw! Harry Kane wants it played into him. He chooses Grealish instead. It's Grealish! It's Kane! Nothing like this has happened for a long time. Here's the overhead kick from Kane! Palmer finds Watkins. Watkins turns! Watkins scores!
Hello and welcome back to the Gate 102 podcast. I hope I find you well and thanks so much for tuning in to this one. Really is appreciated. Also, a quick thank you to everyone who listened to my previous episode, which was me talking about England versus Iceland. And this was the first sort of game affected by COVID that England played. So if you haven't caught that one yet, please do give it a listen. It's available on all your usual podcast platforms. So today's episode, we're going to move on to England's second Nations League game of that 2020 campaign. And this was a draw to Denmark. Now this one finished 0-0. So I remember saying last week, when I get a 0-0, I'm always a bit disappointed. But as always, there's so many things you can talk about within a 0-0 draw. So many things that happened, and that's the same for this game. And there were still plenty of things going on that are worth talking about. And this was only 3 days after the Iceland game, so the players were still in that sort of strange pre-season mode, because obviously the Premier League still hadn't started. We weren't really match sharp. Southgate was clearly experimenting a bit with his squad. And Denmark, of course, are always a tricky opponent, a very good team, especially when they're at home. And you could tell from the start that this was not going to be an easy night. I wanted to start in 11. This was interesting because Southgate changed formation from that Iceland game. So he went with a three at the back for this game. And that's something we're not really seeing that much since the 2018 World Cup. But I suppose with it being a Nations League game and with there being a limited amount of games left before the European Championships in the summer, Southgate's vision was clear, and this was to experiment and try a few different systems out with different players. But anyway, Jordan Pickford in goal. In defence, it was a back three, Eric Dyer and Joe Gomez, who both kept their places from the previous game, and also a debut for Connor Cody, making up the back three. I'm going to talk more about Cody in a minute, but this is his first England appearance, and it was fully deserved after playing so well for Wolves in the Premier League. So it's good to see him make his debut. Out wide, wing-backs, we had Kieran Trippier, again, this time as a left wing-back. So a slightly unfamiliar position for him at the time. And Trent Alexander-Arnold was deployed on the right. And no Kyle Walker. He was obviously suffering a suspension. In midfield, Declan Rice started again as the holding midfielder alongside Calvin Phillips. He was another one making his England debut. Now, Phillips had just broken it through at Leeds. It's funny because he hadn't actually played in the Prem before his debut. He made his England debut before he actually made his Premier League debut. So I think his selection was based off a brilliant year for Leeds getting promoted from the Championship. But it's good to see Phillips make his debut. And finally, up top, Harry Kane led the line again, captaining the team, and supported by Raheem Sterling on the left and Jadon Sancho on the right. I think it says a lot about the trust Southgate had in these new players that they both started and were almost throwing in at the deep end, coming right into the team. So to put Cody and Phillips straight in showed the trust and faith he had in those players. So they were the players that were involved, but two players that were not involved were Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood. Now, both of these players have been dropped from the squad after breaking COVID-19 protocols in Iceland by bringing two women into the team hotel. So Southgate made, I suppose, the inevitable decision to drop them, and he called them out for it because not only did he break the rules, but with the restrictions, he put other people at risk as well, his teammates at risk. So it was a disappointing start to both their senior team careers, really. Obviously, from the highs, making the debut, and then only a few days later, it's just, a real shame. And so just that I'd touch on that, as it was something that the media were talking a lot about going into this fixture. Now, moving on to the events of the game, and if I'm honest, it was quite similar to the Iceland game in terms of it had that pre-season vibe still. And the first half was not the best from England's point of view. I mean, neither team really created too much, but Denmark definitely created the better of the few chances that there were. Pickford was called into action a couple of times, making decent saves to keep it level. But you could tell England was still struggling to find the rhythm, find the flow of play. And the link-up between the midfield and the attack wasn't quite clicking. And England looked a bit flat. It was, again, a bit similar to the Iceland game. A lot of sideways passing, not much penetration. One of those nights where you're watching thinking, we could play all night and probably not score. It's just nothing was clicking. I mean, it's understandable that the team itself was not a familiar team, and obviously it was some debuts for some. And like I say, it's still pre-season, but it doesn't take away the fact that England should have done better. It wasn't good enough. However, having said that, second half was a slight improvement, but I emphasise the word slight because it wasn't a massive improvement. We managed to get the ball more to the front three, Sterling, Kane and Sancho. Second half, the wing-backs were playing a bit higher up, finding better passes, but it still wasn't the best. There was just no end product, and that was the problem. There was just the final ball was just not there. I mean, England's first shot on target in this game came in the 70th minute, courtesy of Raheem Sterling, who had a shot. 70 minutes. I think that sums up the game, really. And that was the longest he had to wait for a shot on target since the World Cup game against Costa Rica back in 2014, which was the 80th minute. And that was also a goalless draw as well. So, and yeah, Southgate did make some changes towards the end to try and create a bit of a spark and try and change a few things. And one of those was Jack Grealish, and he was the third debutant of the night. And this was so exciting for fans, as he was a player who many wanted in the England squad, even before COVID happened. So he finally got the opportunity. But the problem was he came on with 15 minutes to go, and he didn't really have too much time to influence the game. But apart from a couple of trademark runs, but it came to nothing really. But so it's a shame we never really got to see what he was all about in this game. But it was great that he got his long overdue cap, I'd say. And good to see him get his first appearance. It's funny because nothing really happened all game that exciting, really. But the closest there was to a goal actually came in stoppage time at the second half, at the 93rd minute. That's how long we had to wait for a meaningful opportunity, really. Harry Kane went for an goal after rounding the goalie, and it looked for a split second like he'd nicked the win right at the death. He had a shot, but a brilliant last-ditch clearance off the line denied him. And yeah, when Kane rounded the goalkeeper, you're thinking, that's going in, that. No way he's going to miss from there. And it was a good shot, it was on target, but the Denmark defender just got back in time. And yeah, England managed to find a way against Iceland, but sadly, they didn't manage to find a way against Denmark. So in the end, it finished 0-0. A frustrating night, but also you could see why. Again, players weren't fully fit, and Denmark are a tough team. But yeah, not the most entertaining game of football. And this was England's first 0-0 draw since September 2018. And funnily enough, was also in the Nations League away to Croatia behind closed doors. So it doesn't happen too often, but maybe quite fitting given the circumstances of this one. So overall, it was not one to remember in terms of entertainment, but I mean, we only managed 2 shots on target, but it was important minutes in the legs for some players, and a clean sheet away from home is never the worst result. So if you'd offered 4 points from the first 2 games, Iceland, Denmark, Southgate probably would have taken it. Now, I mentioned Connor Cody before. he started in the middle of that back three. And his leadership qualities were seen and heard, even from his first game. He was solid, moved the ball well, obviously got a clean sheet. But with this being behind closed doors, you could obviously hear the players. And throughout the game, you could hear Cody. Cody's voice was heard and giving instructions to his New England teammates. I just love that. I love how, even from his first game, he had the confidence and fearlessness to tell players, even more experienced players than him, what to do. And a proper leader, both on and off the pitch. As I've said, Phillips and Grealish also made their debuts. But there was also a fourth debut as well, and that was for Arsenal youngster Ainsley Maitland-Niles, who came on in the final minutes on a night of very little excitement, really. But he was a player Southgate rated at this point in time. So he could play multiple positions, and he was young as well. And yeah, it's nice to see him get his opportunity, even though it was only with, very few minutes left. So 4 debuts, and that's the most debuts in a competitive game for England since 1962. So that's most debuts since in 58 years in a competitive game. So it just shows how Southgate was making the most of these games to try and see what some players are about. And I suppose the COVID delay, had actually allowed that to happen a bit more. Because obviously there's such a difference in squad post-COVID versus pre-COVID. But anyway, for a 0-0, I think I've covered quite a lot. Not the most exciting, not a game that will live long in the memory, but a lot to take from the game in terms of what Southgate would have gained in the long term. Next week, I'll be talking about a 3-0 win at Wembley in a friendly over Wales. So we'll deep dive into that one next week. So thank you for listening to today's episode. Always is hugely appreciated. And until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.